It's very rare to find a cave like Flatanger which is so steep and has such a high
Hmm.
quality of rock. Like for example, there is a debate on 8A now under the ascent of Alex Meg of Sleeping Lion, how much reinforced or maybe manufactured it is. I think there was one comment saying like, oh, maybe 20-30% of the routes in the world are reinforced. The reality is routes harder than 9A plus. I can maybe think of 5 routes that have no
Wow.
Sika at all.
No kidding.
Almost every route has at least a little bit of Sika, and it's mostly because mostly they are on limestone, and if the limestone is steep, there is no water that really washes the loose stuff off, and the rock quality is mostly not really good. Sometimes it's okay, and sometimes it's really bad, but still you can create hard routes out of
Is the
almost
Sika
everything.
reinforcing holds that were natural, or is it creating holds? That's the question.
If it's not you who makes the job, it's very
Uh,
difficult to tell.
okay.
Because then you have, I don't know. I have a certain rules that if the hold is kind of like you can pull on it and it stays, but you know that in a few years it will break, you reinforce it. For me, that's fine. I do it. But if, for example, you have a tiny flake that is a flake, but if you touch it and it breaks, for me, it's not a hold that deserves to be reinforced because it's
Right.
not a hold. It's like it's not a hold. But a lot of the people would reinforce it.
Yeah, I hear you. So for you, the much kind of purer or cleaner experience is in a cave like Flatinger, where you don't need to add or kind of augment the rock in any way.
Yeah, but it's so rare. And it's also there's a good rock like I don't know Seus, which I think most of the people would agree. Wow, that's one of the most amazing rock. That doesn't really need that much Sika. On the other hand, the climbing is like relatively always the same. It kind of always creates very similar kind of holds. The climbing is amazing, but if you spend there a lot of time, you kind of think like, I want to try something else. Whereas I think like in Flatanger, it's relatively complex, and you have really lots of different holds and styles. For me, that's what makes it really unique. Um, and for example, like Silence has no Sika at all. Change has 2 reinforced holds. Move has 3 reinforced holds. BIG has 2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With is it,
But those were always like something that holds, but I gained some experience over the years, and I can realize that, it's sometimes better to reinforce to kind of maintain the route in a state you want to. And sometimes like if a certain handhold breaks, like the quality of the route will be destroyed, for example.
sure.
It will still go, but I don't know, you will have to find some not very nice beta and something like this.
Right. Yeah. Well, that's really thoughtful kind of exploration of a topic that I don't think is discussed very much. So I appreciate you
I
answering.
think, and even like, for example, manipulation with the rock, I feel like the last 10 years is not discussed at all. I thought like chipping roots 15 years ago was kind of thing of a past and will never really happen again. And now I don't know, to me it seems like it's kind of coming back and nobody really seems to care.
All right, y'all. Just a quick shout out here for today's sponsor, which is Rungni. Magnus Mitbo started this company. You know it, you've seen it. But why do I love it? Why should you love it? Well, first of all, their clothes are incredibly soft. They're so comfy. They just came out with this banger spring line of shorts and tees. And whether I'm climbing or whether I'm lounging, I just love how Rungni fits. And then the other stuff they make is incredible. Their chalk bags. I'm so psyched on their chalk bags. They've got a magnetic closure that keeps the chalk inside, but it's also so satisfying to open and close. Premium materials. And then what goes inside that chalk bag? Magdust chalk. It's so good. Whether I'm struggling on the moon board or struggling on my project out on rock, that Magdust is keeping my fingers nice and sticky. You guys can check it all out at that link below and use code STRUGGLE to score 15% off. Let's go. It usually makes news when somebody, this was happening out in Waco Tanks not too long ago here in the US, where there's some classic routes where one day somebody walked up and a hold was chipped a little bit bigger. So obviously some, upset climber that couldn't send the project wanted to make a hold a little bit better. That seems like it is just blasphemy. I mean, it just seems like the worst thing that you could do. But you're talking a little bit more of a gray area here, where maybe it's not an established route or a classic climb. It's a first ascent, but the first ascensionist is either chipping or adding or trying to make either an impossible route climbable or maybe make it
Yeah.
flow a little bit better. What would be the motivation to do that?
No, no, no. To make a route that you could climb, and ultimately also some a route that many people will enjoy.
Uh,
But and sometimes manufacturing a route is increasing the quality of the route, which is a fair point. I still don't agree with it.
sure. Okay.
But what kind of manufacturing? It's just like you have a two-finger pocket that will just cut your fingers. So if you file it and you make it comfortable, that's fine for me. But there are, especially as nowadays, people bolt and climb in places with a really choppy and bad rock and with a soft rock. Uh, it is really impossible to tell if you climb on a final result if that route is manufactured or chipped or not. Because let's give an example like Yosemite granite or limestone in Sayus. Like if you manufacture something, you will see it after years. If you do it in Margalef, after 1 week, you can't see anything. The rock is so soft, and you can, I don't know, you can sometimes even with a little bit of like brush and doing like this, and with the other side of the brush, if it's like hard enough, you can maybe scratch the rock a little bit, and all of a sudden, from like really tight to finger pocket, it's comfortable to finger pocket.
Interesting.
And the color of the rock doesn't really change so much. And if there is like one rainfall and the water is going over, the scars, they are not there anymore.
Mm,
But in Yosemite, they will always be there even after years
right.
because the rock is so hard.
Yeah. Well, I think there's an ethic there that the community hopefully will tune into, and certainly future route setters hopefully will be at least having the discussion about it, because it seems like there's a spectrum there on maybe there is a place for augmentation if it's going to make a
Mhm.
climb accessible and safer. But then, if it's pushing to the point where you're just trying to make something possible that maybe a future generation could do cleanly just based on the features of the
Mm,
rock, then you're robbing that future generation of the ability to put up something that's cutting edge. So I can see the kind of the spectrum there.
mm. But also there is a discussion if something is like so chossy, uh, you can basically do it still just with so-called reinforcing whatever you want to have it.
Right.
You know, certain routes are just unclimbable unless you use Sika. It's like no way. The rock quality is just so bad. So it's not like really about leaving it to the future generation the way it is. It's just how much you want to reinforce a certain flakes that are really bad, and basically then it's up to you whether you want to do it an 8C or 9B.
Right.
It just depends on you how much you want to hammer down and how much you want to reinforce.
Yeah. Hey, if you enjoyed this conversation here with the king, Adam Ondra, guess what? I talked with him for almost 2 hours on the podcast, where he opened up and shared secrets to his training, nutrition, tactics, and mental game. He also shared some stories that I'd never heard before. It's so, so good. If you're serious about rock climbing, if you want to get better as a climber, I invite you to check out the podcast. You can listen to it for zero cost right there.